Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great Friday. And hopefully you all will find this helpful and educational. Some of this stuff you may already know, but we're going to try to go over some highlights that may help you as you consider building a custom home. I really thought I'd start with what is a general contractor, because everybody has heard the term. And probably you've met some general contractors who just look like they ride around in a truck all day and trying to drive by job sites. And other general contractors are larger business operations. Essentially, a general contractor is a person who is qualified, and a lot of times they're the qualifying agent for a company that does general contracting building, and they're licensed by the state. I think that's one of the things that is important. The state does a process of testing building experience. One of the more challenging parts of this is the financial requirement. To be a general contractor and to be licensed, you'll have a limit, and that limit is based on a financial test that's done by each state. So that helps you if you hire a general contractor from a general contractor, kind of leaving you high and dry during the process. It's a way that protects the consumer. Also, they make sure that general contractors are insured. The building process is a dangerous process. People get hurt, the people working on the job, and there is potential damage on site, potential theft of materials, especially as building materials are as expensive as they are right now. And so there's certain insurance requirements that are required to not only get a license, but maintain a license. Most states will have a website that will show where you can check a license, check an individual who you may be talking to about acting as your general contractor. So what do these guys do? Years ago, I had somebody ask me, why would I ever use a general contractor? All they do is call the subcontractors, and the subcontractors actually come out and do all the work. And so if you've ever tried to build something yourself without the expertise, you may understand why I was a little taken aback. General contractors, they will prepare a complete estimate, which is going to have all of the particulars that people who don't build all the time may not know. Things like builder's risk insurance, the cleanup charges, a porta potty on site. All of those things that you may not think about in your estimating process are things that are hard costs. The objective is to figure out, what is this thing going to cost? And having a good estimate prepared by somebody who is experienced in doing an estimate has value. The general contractors will manage the schedule. They will manage the material deliveries and the labor. If it's done well, then they're trying to get the best prices for the materials, trying to get the best price and the best job in labor. As far as subcontractors, many times you may get a great price on some labor that's being done on a job, but it takes 4 times as long, and you end up having to pay somebody else to come back and fix a mistake. So that's part of where the general contractor's attention to the detail during the build has value. They act as a buffer between the subcontractors and you as the owner. If you're the owner and you don't know about construction, then subcontractors can pretty much come and tell you anything. I've had people that we've worked with over the years who've had bad experiences where they give a subcontractor request money up front, subcontractor gets paid and then never shows up. So the contractor acts as a buffer. They also have relationships with subcontractors of work that they've done, so they have a good working relationship, and they know how to rely on each other to do the best job for you. The contractor is going to be monitoring the quality of work that's performed on site. I think this is a big one because if you don't know what you're looking for walking through a construction site, you don't know, and you may pay a contractor, a subcontractor for doing work, and then you fail an inspection later. And let me step back for a second. During the building of a home in most counties, states, they will have an inspection process, and it varies by county. Some counties may have 10 inspections or 12 inspections. Other counties may have just a health inspection to make sure that the septic system is in properly. So the contractor is going to work with the local building authority when they do their inspections to make sure that that everything's in compliance, and and the house can proceed, and that you'll end up with a certificate of occupancy in the end, which is kind of the final seal of approval from the local codes authority. Part of the reason you guys are on this call, I think, or this Zoom call, I'm not even sure what they call these things, but is because you're kind of looking for guidance. Where do I start? How do I do this? And that's part of what the contractor will guide you through. A lot of times on the front end, we'll give our clients homework. We'll give them a list and say, hey, here's a list of homework that you guys can go out and start looking at. What kind of materials do you want in the house? Go look at siding, look at cabinets, look at flooring, figure out what you want in your own home. And a good contractor can create a framework that allows you to be better organized on the front end to make better decisions throughout the build. Lastly, the contractor is ultimately responsible for the work that's done on site. If a subcontractor comes out and does work and it fails to meet code, or there's a problem with it, it's not done correctly, it's up to the contractor to get that subcontractor back or get it fixed. So I think those are, I'm sure there are, we could go through a lot of other things. I just try to hit some high points, but that's kind of where the value add is to the process. So what are you looking for in these guys, these contractors? And, I've been around the log home industry for a long time and have, been a contractor, but also worked with a lot of contractors. So I believe that having a contractor that communicates well, is highly organized, has references. I'll leave the last bullet point here alone for a minute. But if you call a general contractor and they don't call you back, or when they call you back, they say, who are you? What are you trying to do? Have I sent you any estimates? Then that's a pretty good indication that they really aren't well organized. And, contractors should be professional business people. I mean, as I tell people, you're really not hiring us to swing a hammer. You're hiring us as professionals, and you're hiring us to help guide you through this process. So you want somebody that you can really communicate well, and there's mutual respect both ways. They need to respect you in the process and what you bring to the table, and you need to respect them. And that kind of brings us back to, well, before I go there, I'll say always check references, talk to people. The process of building a house is stressful. There are ups and downs through the whole thing. And, go and talk to people who've worked with the contractor. Did they disappear on them halfway through the job, when things got stressful, or there was an issue that came up that caused stress in the relationship between the contractor and the owner. Spend that time. So the last bullet point, we call it the marriage analogy. And basically, those of you who are married or have dated for a while, it starts off great. You can't wait to see each other. You're ready for that next date. And, it's the honeymoon phase. And then after you get married, after you've been married for a while, it becomes work. And that's kind of, how building a house can be. It's everybody's excited. It's a new house, and you can start to visualize it, and you've got this contractor you're working with, and then something comes up in the process. A product's not available that you wanted, or you may not have told the contractor that you wanted to use a certain type of decking on the outside of the house on your deck, and some different products put there. There's so much communication that goes back and forth. There can be things that pop up during the process that cause stress in the relationship. So as you're talking to the contractor, kind of assess, do you feel like you can work with this person? Do you feel like they're organized? Do you feel like they're listening to you? We on our end try to communicate with people we're building for once a week, if not prior to that, if we've got a question. We try not to assume things. We try to circle back around and say, these were the color shingles you wanted, right? Even though a month ago they sent us a single sample and said, yeah, this is what we want in the house. We'll follow back up. And part of that is just trying to be good at communicating. The other piece of it too is that it becomes complicated, where you may send 5 different color shingles to the contractor and change your mind every 2 weeks. And, so it's always a good idea for you to be communicating and saying, hey, this is the last one. This is the one I want. Really, really it is. Now I'm not going to change my mind again. And so that's really important. I knew a couple that was building with a contractor over in North Carolina, and things had gotten stressful, and they called and were asking us about something unrelated, and I said, well, call him and talk to him. And she said, I'm scared to call him. And if you ever think that may be the scenario with you, do not engage with that particular person. They may be a great builder, they may just not be good at communicating. So I don't want to spend too much time on that point. What's your role in this whole process of building your house? It's I think that a lot of people look at it and think, okay, I'm hiring this person to build the house. I'll just show up in 6 or 8 months and it'll be done. And building a custom home, that's just not the case. You need to be highly organized. And you need to ask questions. If the contractor is saying, hey, let's build this way, or here's what we see, ask questions. This process is not brain surgery. There's nothing mystical about it. It's pretty straightforward. And if you ask questions and are an educated buyer, then your end product is going to be closer to what you want than if you just kind of disappear. And just, if you say something vague, like, yeah, I kind of, I want a wood front door. There's no telling what you're going to get. You need to figure out what kind of door you want. Does it have a window in it? Is it mahogany? Is it red? What do you want in your house? And you'll have, we have people come to us all the time and say, well, I just want kind of the normal thing. Whatever you all usually use, that's fine. The problem with that is that we don't know what you might think is the normal thing. So we really need you to partner. And I look, when I talk to the clients that we talk to, I'm very clear on the front end that we're partnering to build you a house. And we'll address anything that comes up during the build together from the same side of the desk. So we're not adversaries, we're partnering. And being a partner means that you need to do your part as well, and be an educated buyer, give good direction, give clear direction to your contractor during that process. Also, one of the points that I would definitely make is this last one is designate one person for the contractor to communicate with. Many times you'll have a husband and a wife, and the husband will say, we want this floor in the house. And the contractor will go on about it and just start trying to find the floor. And then the wife will say, no, we want this house. We want this kind of floor. And so you get two opposing people telling you what to do. First of all, it's inefficient. Second of all, there's a high probability that the contractor is going to be caught in the middle of a conflict if either floor is put in, frankly. So spend time working together, look at things, and have one person that is communicating for all parties involved. Next month, we're going to meet we're scheduled to meet a client who is talking to us from Florida, and I think there are 10 or 11 of them that are going to come up that are all going to be part of this build. And that's going to be number one. We're going to put a big sign up on the door that says, "You can't leave here without having one person to contact us." So that's a little bit of an extreme situation, but I think hopefully you follow my point. All right. How to determine whether or not you need to serve as your own general contractor or hire one? People over the years, many of them will act as their own general contractor, and there's people that can do it highly effectively, who can do a great job and who can save money doing it. Hiring a general contractor costs money, and you're paying for that expertise. If you have that expertise, great, you can save the money. Here are a few tips. First of all, if you're financing your project, most banks will frown on lending money to a project where an unqualified owner in their eyes, is acting as the general contractor. The banks want to hold a professional accountable, because what happens is they lend $500,000 to build a house. They've spent $250,000 so far, and there's a problem, and they don't have an asset that's worth $250,000 at the end of the day. They want somebody to hold accountable, and if they have a general contractor there, they have somebody who they can hold accountable. If you're acting as your own general contractor, then in their eyes, the odds of an error or a problem with the build is greater. And also, what's your time worth? Are you retired and just sitting, don't have an obligation, or don't have something that you spend your time on that earns income for you? Then you may have the time to go out and really sit on the job site every day and climb the steep learning curve that is custom home building. But if you are, looking at this thinking, I can spend weekends and evenings doing this, that's challenging. And in many cases, either your work will suffer or the job will suffer. Our project managers will be on site, and many times, if, let's say, the electrician is out there working, yeah, the electrician knows what they're doing. But if a project manager is on site, they're going to catch things and communicate things and answer questions for the electrician that will make it so much more efficient. And you'll end up with a better product. So unless you're able to really spend some time, doing the legwork on the phone, calling the tile guy 10 times, trying to coordinate his schedule, it takes time. And if you have a job that pays you whatever it pays you, weigh the time that it's going to be a distraction of building against what your earnings are doing what you do every day. So I think that's something that you just need to think about. Also, do you have the expertise? And I said, and also we put here, or do you have someone you can hire with the expertise to help you? Sometimes you can find a builder who's not a contractor, and you can pay them by the hour, and they'll sit on the job for you. But understand, they're not the licensed contractor, and you're not paying them like a licensed contractor. So in many cases, you can find these guys, they're experienced, but ultimately the buck still stops with you as the owner if you are acting as your own general contractor. let's see. Also, a lot of people want to self-perform items. Like some people will say, well, I'll put my own cabinets in, or I'll put the floors down, or I can do some of the framing. And I'm talking about if you're acting as your own general contractor, that's great. Again, the question is, what is your time worth out working in the real world? And do you have the expertise to do it? Or are you going to be kind of trying to try to figure it on as you go? It looks really easy on DIY Network, and they do it in 30 minutes. But really in the real world, it's a little harder. Even me, who's been around this for a long time, if you ask me to go out and frame, a bunch of walls in a house, I don't do it every day. Can I pass a test on it? Sure. Can I read it in a book? Absolutely. But actually going out and doing it, it would take me about 4 times longer than it takes a group of skilled carpenters to do it. So also, there are some things that you just won't be able to do yourself. Electrical, plumbing, heating and air, a lot of those require licenses. So, and those are a pretty good part of any budget. So those are things to think about. And then, weigh that on how much you can save. The cost of hiring a general contractor is usually cost plus 17 or 20 to 70 to 22%. And that is, if you do that quick math, that's a chunk of change. Understanding that you're going to be, let's say it costs, the contractor's fee is $50,000 to make the math easy, and it takes 10 months to build the house. Essentially, you're paying the contracting company $5,000 a month, or you can break that into weeks if you want to do the role or to take on the role that we said earlier. Is it worth that? And can you spend the time necessary to save that money? I've seen many people do it. And I've seen other people that have gotten over their head doing it. So I don't discourage it. I think that it needs to be an informed decision that you guys make of whether or not you want to take on that role. So this is the number one question that people ask, and one of my project managers gave me the answer, which I loved, so I thought I would share it. But everybody says, how much does this thing cost? And and so everybody expects that you can just say, oh, it costs X. This is what it costs. It costs $200,000, $500,000, $1 million, whatever it is. And my project manager's response is, well, how much does a bag of groceries cost? If you fill that bag of groceries with ramen noodles, it costs less than if you fill it with filet mignon, right? And it's very similar with a custom home. A custom home is going to be a function of the choices that you make. And it really comes into kind of 3 areas that I look at is, what does your lot look like? What do you have to do to the lot to be able to build a house on it? Is it a 45-degree angle, or is it flattened in the middle of a pasture? And how big is the house? What's the footprint of this structure? And then the one that you guys really have a huge amount of input in is the fixtures, and the flooring. You could spend $4 a square foot for flooring, or you could spend $50 a square foot for flooring. And there is no right or wrong. I've seen $1 million houses with luxury vinyl tile, which is a great product, but a lower cost product in it. I've seen houses that really have more money in the kitchen than they do in the structure of the house. It really just depends on what you want in your home. And that's one of the neat things about building a custom home. It is your house. Everything in it is yours. The design is yours. The amenities, everything's yours. And it takes time. It goes back to an earlier slide when I touched on the fact that that it is that you need to be highly organized. You need to be involved. You need to be making decisions. And the contractor, they'll be glad to assist you, but ultimately it's your house, and you need to have a say in what goes in it, of course. All right, budgeting. This is probably, I'd say, arguably, this would be the most important step in the process. People always come and they say, how much does the house cost? And then after they get past the grocery analogy, they'll say, okay, well, kind of what's a normal house cost, And so you kind of have that conversation because people, they want to know the answer to the question, but the reality is it takes work to figure out what that's going to be. And if you talk to a contractor and you ask them sitting in their office, what's this house cost? And they can spend 10 minutes looking at the plan and they say, that house is going to cost $500,000. And they didn't ask you any other questions, that information is useless. Your site, the choices that you make, do you want stone on the foundation? Do you want a metal roof? What do you want in the house? All of those things can affect the price dramatically. And so this is an analytical process. It is not an emotional one. You need to separate the emotions and excitement from, okay, what's this going to cost? And what that requires is sitting down with a spreadsheet. And Don, I will share with you a spreadsheet that we can send out that kind of covers, the kitchen sink, everything in the kitchen sink. That we try to use to cover all of these items, and no item's too small. What typically happens is you'll go through this analysis and you'll say, okay, clearing the lot cost X, the septic system cost Y, and so you'll go through and do all of this detailed analysis, and then you end up with a budget that's more than you want to spend. That happens a lot, and what we tell people is, let's do it the way that you want it first. Let's run the numbers. Let's figure out what this thing is going to cost based on the way that you want the house. And then you've got it all broken down. And then then you can circle back around and say, okay, the stone on this house is going to cost $25,000. What are the options to try to cut that to 10? Well, we can put stone on the front of the house, and then underneath all the porches, we're just going to paint that and not put any stone on it. Okay, we've just saved $10,000, let's say. Those are the types of decisions that need to be made. Those decisions don't need to be made when there's guys standing out there putting stone on the house. They need to be made before you start digging. And, going through that analytical process is really important. And I put, and there's no magic wand. And I think that some people look at it and say, I really, really want this house to cost $400,000. And you'll put an estimate together and it's 560. And they'll come back and we'll say, okay, what do you want to change in here? And they say, well, I don't want to change anything. And I really, really want this house to cost $400,000. At the end of the day, there is no magic wand. The materials, there's no bargain basement place to go buy material. It costs truly what it costs for the materials that go in the house and the labor that goes into it. And going through this analytical process will make you familiar with it. And also, as you do it, there are going to be some things that we call them non-negotiables. Some people will say, I have to have a stone fireplace in the house. That's a non-negotiable. I have to have a metal roof. That's a non-negotiable. And then, so you start kind of working off of those. And then when you see what those items cost, then you may adjust. But ultimately, this is the process, and it takes time. It's not an afternoon exercise. It is getting contractors to go out to the site and look at the site and give you numbers. Not looking at pictures and not having somebody text you back and say, yeah, I can take the trees off of there for $10,000. Well, he forgot to tell you that he wasn't going to haul them off, and now it's, 18,000. So the budgeting process is critical and needs to be done really, like I said, in an unemotional way. And this is your process to make decisions, or it's your opportunity to make decisions for the whole project. And there is no item too small. People, you look at a budget and you'll say, did you allow for the portable toilet? Well, no, but that's not a big deal. Well, in 10 months at $90 a month, that's $900. I don't know about you, but $900 is a big deal to me. I'd rather know that I have that cost on the front end than all of a sudden I'm, got $900 in a portable toilet that I didn't allow for. And then it becomes much more stressful. Be specific about the things that you're going to put in the house. If don't just say I'm going to put tile in there. Let's find out what tile you want. Go look and find out if it's a $4 a square foot tile or a $6 a square foot tile installed. The installation of the product, and also the other pieces. We've had people budget and put and say, oh, the tile is $3 a square foot for the tile. Well, that's just for the tile. That's not the backer. That's not the thin set. That's not the grout. That's not all of the other pieces that go into the process. And this goes back to part of, a contractor being involved in the estimation. Build in a contingency. I can't stress enough that if you're borrowing money from a bank and you have borrowed every single dime that you can, and you are spending in your budget every single dime, something will pop up. Take, for example, right now, if you had put an estimate together in October and you're out buying lumber now, lumber's more expensive. Now, I'm just going to say this to everybody. I truly believe that the market's going to turn around, and it's going to be moving back in our direction soon. But, if you got to buy lumber today, it's more expensive than it was. That's part of what you need a contingency for. If they're putting the septic tank in and they have an issue with rock and they have to spend $500 more getting the rock out, that goes into a contingency. You don't want to put yourself into a position where every phone call you dread, like, oh, it's going to be another $100, it's going to be another $50, because at that point, it just becomes really stressful. And, the objective of this planning process is to make the build as stress-free as possible. There is no such thing as a stress-free build, but as stress-free as possible. So, Dawn, I think I ran through that probably quicker than you anticipated that I would, but I'm not sure how long that took, but I'm happy to answer questions. And if I went too fast, I'm sure that people probably will have a few that points of clarification.
Yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. I think it's, good information. I think one thing people always, ask is just how to find a contractor. Do you have any tips maybe for how to, find a general contractor?
That's actually a great point. And it's going to vary. I would say go talk to the local home builders association. I always say, go talk to the local building supply. Typically not the big box companies, but the larger kind of local building supplies, and go talk to the professional desk there, the pro desk. And go say, hey, I'm looking for a contractor. I'm looking for somebody who is buying lots of stuff on a regular basis and pays their bills. Those are two really good indicators that they're legitimate and that they're going to do a good job for you. And I've even gone, I would even go and talk to the local building official. If you've got a codes office in your area, go in and talk to the building official and say, hey, I'm going to be building a house in your county, and I'm looking for a good contractor. And in reality, the building officials are not supposed to make any recommendations. But if you're nice to them and you talk to them and, just say, I'm just trying to do my due diligence here, then typically they'll say, well, here's a couple of guys that, when we come out and do the inspections, we typically don't have any issues, and the houses are getting done on a pretty consistent, timely basis.
We do have a couple questions. Some people are mentioning the budgeting spreadsheet. We will send that out when we send out the YouTube link for the presentation. And then we've got a question: how far along in the CAD plans for the home do you get before bringing in the contract?
Great. That's actually a great question. That probably should have been on my list. Usually, if you're building a stone mill house, or then, typically when we are building, we'll start looking at the plan, when it's in the preliminary stage, so that we can start to get an idea. Because if you end up, getting the entire set of plans done, and then the budget is more than what you want to spend, then it may require a plan adjustment. If it requires a plan adjustment, then you've got to go all the way back through the process again. Typically at the preliminary stage, where there's good floor plans, good elevations, and there's enough information that we can, kind of say, hey, this project is going to be in this range. We think it's going to be in a $400,000 to $475,000 range based on your lot, and we'll go out and look at the lot at that point, and get some of the information that you've given us and say, hey, this is kind of the range that we're looking at. And then at that point, you can make a decision and say, well, actually, and this doesn't happen very often, but there is, I want to make the house bigger. So you may want to make the house bigger and change some things around, or you may want to, adjust some things in the plans. Once Stone Mill takes the plan to a check set or a final, making revisions to the plan takes a lot longer. It takes the designers a lot more hours to do the revisions to a plan. So having your contractor look at the plan earlier is better. Also, as soon as you get a preliminary drawing, that's when I would start talking to contractors in general. If you talk to a contractor, and if you call and say, hey, I'm thinking about building a log house, do you have a set of plans? No. Do you have property? No. Then they're going to say, like, well, call me when you have both of those and we can have a better conversation. Because they really can't give you any information that's worth much until you have a lot that they can look at and you have plans. And, I will say this too, good contractors are in demand. And so, you want to present yourself as somebody who's qualified. And if you've got a plan and you are, if you actually have a set of drawings planned and you have a plan for what you're wanting to build, and you have put thought into what you're going to do on the lot, then you're a lot more qualified than somebody that's just trying to figure out, if they want to go buy a lot somewhere and invest in a lot. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, and then we have another question about the marriage between, I guess, Stonemill and Creekside. It says, how has the marriage been with Creekside? So maybe go over, maybe, kind of explain how Creekside plays into this.
Well, the Stone Mill handles the design, the manufacturing of all of the components in the house. And then Creekside, they will travel anywhere in the country, and they will do the installation of the log home components to a dried in shell. And then your general contractor will do everything around those two areas. A lot of the way I think about it is, you've got this very specialty contractor, like subcontractor, and that's Creekside and Stone Mill working together. And they are providing material and the labor to go take care of everything that's unique about building the log or timber structure. And the idea of those two entities is for the contractor to only have to do the parts of the build that are normal, to building a custom home, building a foundation, septic and well and electrical and all of those pieces. And then Stonemill will provide support to the contractor for any questions that are log home related that your contractor may have. And let me reiterate this as well. You don't have to use a contractor that's ever built a log home, much less a Stonemill home. If they're a good general contractor, and if you go back to the earlier slides, they're well organized, they're good communicators, and then they can partner. Your contractor can partner successfully with Stonemill and Creekside to do an excellent job. And Stonemill and Creekside have done that all over the country for, I'd say, close to 20 years. The two of them have worked together.
Rob, we have another question on meeting a contractor. When you first meet a contractor on site, what information do they need to provide to him?
Well, first of all, you would need to have your drawings. And then you need to, we call it walking the site. I mean, you're kind of, if you've bought the lot, then you are going to have some sort of idea kind of where you visualize the house. If you bought the lot for a view, then you're probably going to have an area of the property that you look at and say, this is where we're thinking about putting the house because we want the view here. If you want their input for that, then certainly they can do that. But it's really helpful for you to give them your vision. Contractors, they can't, get your perspective on what you're trying to accomplish. Their job is to help you accomplish it and to provide guidance. So if you have a survey, if you have a topographical map that shows the elevation of it, if you have an area where you think, well, I'm kind of thinking the driveway may come in here or the house may come in there, spend some time and walk around and take some spray paint or some stakes and just kind of try to lay it out. And if the expectation is that y'all are going to be trying to get a feel for where the house is going to be, if you've got plans and the contractor knows that, a lot of times they'll come out and stick some stakes in the ground and kind of stake the project out so you can start to visualize it a little bit more. The location of the house and the elevation of how much of the house is sticking out of the ground are two things that are really important for you to get the visual effect that you want when you drive up to the house. So a lot of it has to do with aesthetics and how everything sets on the lot. So, but let me say this: anything that you got from the real estate agent or at closing on the property, from whether or not the property perks, which hopefully you know that information when you buy the lot, and if there's power that's close to the site, just any information that you know about utilities or anything else in the area can be helpful and will help the contractor give you better information on some of those initial meetings.
We also have a question about, I guess, optimizing square footage. And this, this is, we get this question a lot actually too. Is it really more cost effective to build up rather than build out?
That's a great question. And the answer is sometimes. No, it's the answer is it is typically more cost effective, and the reason why is the foundation work. As the foundation gets larger, you end up having to clear more property. You end up having to dig more footings, lay more block, and you get the footprint gets larger. it typically increases that cost. So in essence, a one level house should cost more per square foot than a two level house. I will say that the basement square footage is usually less expensive than first and second level square footage. Again, all depending on how you finish it.
Okay, let's see. I think that's all the questions I have right now. Does anybody else have any questions or anything to add? Oh, wait, let's see. We got a new message coming. Oh, thank you. Abby said thank you.
Absolutely. Hopefully this was helpful. You know, you're welcome to email me. My information is there as far as an email address. You can shoot me an email. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions. But typically the Stonemill team is pretty good about that as well.
We did get a question here at the end. It says, when getting power from the road to the build site, is it better to do it beforehand or to have the input of your general contractor first?
I would, if you know where the house is going to be set, and if you know where the driveway is going to be, and if you know where the septic field is going to be, and if you know where your well is going to be, then you could take that on if you wanted to. I typically discourage people from trying to start doing things. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse. You know, I've seen many people do it successfully, but you know, if you think about it, you know, if you say I'm gonna bring underground power up to the house, and you spend $10,000 getting underground power to the house, and then you think you have a location of where it's going to be, and then when you look at the septic, the only place the drain field can go is where you plan for the house to go. You know, at that point, now you're moving the house, and now you're digging up and moving. You're moving everything around. So you know, it's a good planning process to go through and figure out, you know, where the septic field is going to be, because that a lot of times will dictate where your house will be located, no matter where you might want it. That's one of the things that, you know, I don't know of a county in the U.S. that does not have a health inspection where they come out and they look at the soil if you're going to have a septic field, and that can be a big determining factor. So, you know, you can do it. I think it's just much better to try to plan. You know, if you think about it as a battle, you know, to plan your course of the battle before you start. And you know, that goes back to your estimates. That goes back to sitting down and putting things together. You may decide if bringing power in, you may say, I'm going to bring power in underground, and it's going to be 300 yards to do it. You may look at it and say, well, that's what we're going to do. And then later down the road, you come back and say, actually, I really wish I had brought power in, you know, the first 200 yards overhead, because the utility will do that for free. And then I'm going to go the last 100 yards underground, and I just saved $8,000. You know, there are a lot of variables to the process, and I've seen folks that we've gone out and talked to, and they've already dug a house seat out, you know, and they said, you know, we just thought we'd get ahead of this thing. Well, where they were going to put the house, it won't fit. You know, they didn't go back and really look at it as far as where the house is going to sit, what retaining walls may need to be there, and maybe how to change the size and location of retaining walls, which can add to cost, obviously, based on the location of the house. And I know I just went from electrical to location of the house, but you know, it all kind of is tied together. You know, I prefer to try to plan things out as much as we can before you start bringing in people in there and start working.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much planning actually goes into it from the general contractor side. When you're looking at easements and, utility easements, setback requirements, drainage swells, um, you know, the septic field lines, all that stuff. And so I think it is important just at least talk to the general contractor first and get on the same page with them, to where
Mhm.
you can make your plans. So,
Yeah, and I think you even go out and get, if you can get the health folks out there and get them to look at it, and then get a surveyor out there and have a surveyor lay out, where the house is going to be, and then, because once you start digging, you're kind of neck deep at that point. It's hard to change things, and if your electrical is going in, most likely your driveway is going to go in at the same time, because you got to clear a path. And the same guy who's out there putting the electrical and digging the trenches for it is probably the same guy who's going to be doing the excavation. Sometimes they'll do the septic, and the other part. So why not get them all there at the same time? Get all the equipment there at the same time. You've got one mobilization fee for everything, and you save everybody time. And let's face it, time is money. If you're an excavator, those guys typically are looking to make X number of dollars an hour for every hour that machine is operating. So as efficient as you can make it for them, the less it costs you.
I agree. Well, we don't have any other questions right now. I don't know if there's any last minute, final points you want to make before we get off here. Well, we can finish up early and everybody can
I either did a really good job or this is a really boring subject, one of the two. But we will, this is just, like I said, I think just to reiterate, building a house is a process. Buying a house that's existing, that's a transaction. You go out and you buy it. This is a process, and it is an unbelievably rewarding process for people who do it. And the one thing that I can say, and I'll just reiterate it again, as I'm a broken record, is proper planning makes everything work. We've had people that have tried to sign a general contracting agreement in with us before we finish an estimate, and we won't do it. They'll say, well, we want to send you a check and we want to sign a contract. Say, nope, sorry. We need to get a budget that we all agree on, because it is a marriage and it is a partnership. And if you start it off on, on an expectation that that is not solid, then you've got trouble, because building houses is expensive. For many of y'all, it'll be the most money you ever spend on something in your life. And, and there is absolutely no way to find somebody who can say, oh yeah, this is how much this house cost. The best, a good example is, you estimate you put $3,000 in a budget to get all of the light fixtures for the house, and your wife goes out, and I'm going to get shot for saying wife, her husband goes out and buys a $6,000 chandelier. Let's put that chandelier in the estimate on the front end. And then when you're making the decisions about things, you can say, yeah, we want the $6,000 chandelier and we're willing to give up the metal roof for it. So those decisions are happening on paper. It's just, the two most important documents to building are the plans and the estimate. Those two documents need to be tied together. And and you'll find contractors who are like, yeah, I don't need a set of plans. Just tell me what you want. You need to, proper planning makes for a good process. And so hopefully this was helpful to everybody. And I appreciate everybody coming and giving us their attention. And I will get that estimating spreadsheet over to Dawn and let her send it out. And hopefully it will be of help. The main thing it's trying to do is to try to cut it up into enough pieces that if you're looking at it, you go, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't think I was going to need a temporary power pole, or I didn't think I might need 50 tons of gravel for a driveway. And all of those things end up costing money. And what nobody wants is for you to get halfway into a project and figure out that the numbers don't work. And like I said, this is an analytical process. The math does not lie. And you need to have a good budget to start with and use that budget as a tool. And it'll be a dynamic document, but use that budget as a tool throughout the entire building process.
I agree. Well, thank you guys for coming. I want to point out we do have a YouTube channel where we have all of our past virtual lunch and learns. Those are posted on there. If you watch one and it references as a handout, we've been doing this now for a little over a year on the virtual lunch and learns. So just shoot me an email and let me know if you need a handout from a previous one. There's no way for me to upload those on YouTube. So I don't mind to send those to you. Also, we have all of our Tip Tuesdays on there. We probably have about 68 or 70 Tip Tuesdays in our library now, and we go over a lot of tips on design, building, maintenance, just pretty much the whole gamut that goes along with building a log home and how to take care of it. So check it out. And if you guys need anything in the meantime, get with your sales consultant or send me an email. It's d_queener@stonemill.com. But thank you all for coming. And thank you, Rob, for doing this presentation for us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.